At this point, another layer comes into play. I offer to entertain the party and DM with a few small adventures for them. I used Adventurers League once of Storm King's Thunder's timeline, which later morphed into playing the actual Storm King's Thunder adventure. And it's going absolutely fantastic, so we start going week by week. One week I narrate a small adventure for the party where Steven is now a player. He's more than a decent one, by the way. Much better than he is a DM. And another week he narrates his story for us. This brings up another problem. I have more experience DMing than this guy, and people obviously enjoy my way of DMing more. Moreover, I am all for my players breaking the game, being witty, unusual, and making creative decisions, and I reward them for getting off the railroad. So however hard Steven tries to break the game and make me suffer, he just cannot. I don't want to be an asshole about it as well, and I support Steven here. I tell him, don't worry, you won't break anything. I love what you guys do. I'll only reward you for being cool and witty and unusual. Relax, kick back, have the time of your life, and don't be scared to break the game. I expect you to. In retrospect, maybe this was the wrong thing to say, given his distaste towards what we were doing in his game. But at the time, I thought this would be both reassuring and would show him that not following the railroad is not a bad thing, and can be loads of fun. Besides, we all know that the absence of a railroad only means that the DM hides it well. Dungeon masters always find a way to bring players back to where they belong, doing what they should be doing. Anyway, the games go well when one of two major sessions to destroy this all and bring a breakdown of Steven happen. First one comes when Etienne and Aaron get in a fight. As I said before, I roleplay Etienne as close to his element, fire, as possible. He's a choleric, easily enraged, having anger issues, but burning down quite fast. Mocking or teasing him is like pouring gasoline in the campfire. It'll blaze and burn, but just for a few minutes before going back to the norm. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, so I message privately to my co-players, explaining that, noting that I love them, and it's not because I want to hurt them or their character, but my way of roleplaying. And if they're not okay with this, I will totally go back a little and not roleplay this hard. They all actually love this character, and they enjoy good roleplay, so we're good in this regard. The time comes when the party leaves the Fey town and heads out, and Etienne starts to ramble about the politics on this world, and the king, and the general. He's an irritable fella, and the peak of his trust is showing his true face to his peers. He's obviously on the very edge of losing it when Aaron jumps in mocking him, telling him to then fuck off and sort of challenge his authority. Etienne is an asshole. You cannot question, let alone challenge, an asshole's authority, and he absolutely loses it. He turns around to her, fuming, in absolute berserker mode. He fires fireball after fireball, burning hands, punches her as she crawls away, screaming obscenities. Read Lemongrab, who finds her behavior unacceptable! Mora is confused, but her little orcish brain cannot understand what the hell happened. She only knows one party member is getting hurt, and she attacks Etienne, who manages not only to survive, but force her away. Khaled attacks as well, and nearly gets himself killed by one meat burning hand spell. I actually pride myself on avoiding combat as this character. He's a minstrel after all. Why would he fight? He's my main, and been around ever since 3.5 came over. In his lifetime, he hadn't killed a single living thing. And the living there is only because one single time. He had killed an undead after the party took too long to finish it, and he flipped out on the creature and finished it off. Hell, he only owns one attack spell, Fireball, by choice, because I just thought that it fits his race. The rest is utility and social spells. 5e that made every class a bit tougher showed me why avoiding battle was a good idea. Bards turned out to be a weapon of mass destruction. He nearly zeroed the entire party. Now, you might be thinking that was a shit thing to do, suddenly attacking another player character, and you would be absolutely right. If not for the fact that I approached this player and checked if she was on board with this. I never planned to actually kill her character. The plan was, Etienne flips out, he bursts into absolute amok, throws Aaron unconscious, realizes what he did, stabilizes her, or more likely allows Khaled, the one good character to do that, and spends the next session or two tending to her and making up for this the best way he can, which isn't much. Just not being a total piece of shit to her. But that's a lot from this half-Afridi fella. Thing is, the DM didn't know anything about it. This scene alone, the fact we went there instead of going through his plot, you might think this scene that happened would be the one to anger him. But it's not. It's the one that followed right as I was calming my character down. The DM was a little hurt that his party had a scandal, and he decided to punish us. His idea of punishment was a TPK. He punished us by suddenly spawning 4 purple worms at us. 4. At a party where 2 characters have 1 HP left. One character has half the HP left. The only one with like 80% of HP is a fucking bard of all things with all of his high level spells out. And one character just ran away in terror because he's a scarecrow made of hay and there are fireballs being thrown. But he hadn't accounted for one small thing. We were players that had so much experience, not the ones who just blindly attacked everything they saw, which, after the PvP we had, sounds like hypocrisy, but trust me, we're not. And I also have experience with players trying to break the game, so I know how this shit works. No, he didn't flip out because we started role-playing in his game and having party conflict. He flipped out because we obliterated his TPK worms. A roll in, my character recollects everything he possibly can about purple worms, while Kaled tries to fight them, and Mora gets swallowed whole. Remember I said evil doesn't mean running everything for the party? Etienne goes to save those with 1 HP and those swallowed. He managed to convey the worms are blind and they cannot hear you on a certain distance, soon securing most of the party aside from Mora, who is still swallowed, trying to crawl back up, but never managing to get out of the throat. Sure, she should attack the worm, but the character doesn't know that, so the character tries to crawl out. He tries to get her out, Mage's Hand, some other tricks, she's too heavy. Then, an amazing plan comes into my mind. A simple spell which will save the orc, given the DM allows it to work like I want it to. And the DM allowed it to work this way. Etienne swears at the top of his lungs as he lunges forward preparing a spell. Acrobatics check to jump into the worm's throat, avoiding teeth, else he'd be down in one bite. He succeeds. He slides in, close to Mora when she tries to crawl up, grabs her hand and casts Leoman's Hut. Leoman's Hut is a spell that creates a sphere with microclimate in it around the caster that doesn't allow anything the caster doesn't want in, and the caster doesn't want the worm in. Note that according to Monster Manual, the worm leaves a tunnel of 10-foot diameter after himself, so it's 10 feet in diameter. Leoman's Hut is 10 feet in radius, so 20 in diameter, twice as wide as the worm. So suddenly a spear appears right at the base of the worm's skull, breaking its jaws and crushing its skull to smithereens. It tears through the flesh and practically beheads the creature. The fighter's out, the bard's out, 1 worm down, 3 more to go, and many, oh so many Leomund Huts were left to cast. We don't cast them though. I want to leave Steven with at least some of his pride. He made eyes to Mora's character, and our characters bolt out of there using Featherfall. Etienne casts it on both of them. Mora throws him as far and as high as she can before running up the side of the cliff and jumping herself like that, slowly ascending, avoiding Worm's tremor sense. We survive. We all survive. The party makes up, we're happy, we help each other out on our feet. Seemingly all of the built-up frustration out on the worms. We lick our wounds, we were never presented with any healing potions, after all, and we start a camp. And Steven is pissed. He's pissed that we didn't follow his railroad. He's pissed people have more fun in another adventure. He's pissed he cannot break my own game. He's pissed he didn't manage to TPK us. More importantly, as I see it, he's pissed at himself. He was the DM for crying out loud. He could have made everything his way. He could have said, no, this spell doesn't work that way. He could have said, no, you can't make the Fae take off the collar. He could have said, but the general reads your minds and knows you're going to take the side of the winner, and she orders your execution. He could have said, the hunters didn't fall for your ruse, they attack. And he didn't. He wanted it badly, but he decided to let us play the game we wanted, and he got mad at us for that. And never, ever communicated what was wrong. How do I know all this? He wrote a tantrumy message in the group chat about everything when he quit. And he quit because we misread a rule. Roll the layer number 3. It's New Year's Eve, and my birthday. Steven wants to DM, but he wants to make a holiday theme. He comes up with this funny Save the Christmas adventure, and asks to make new characters for this one-shot. I rarely play casters, again my bard is a social butterfly, not really a casting agent, and I have a concept I wanted to play for a long while. It's a tiefling sorcerer by the name of Brandywine. Absolute bae and the kindest, most caring and sweet person the world has ever seen. I thought that Steven disliked my evil character and wanted to give him a break. Whatever I roll, I always ask for a 6 for Brandywine's wisdom, as in my head he's unaware and naive as it gets, not able to find his own ass with his both hands, and the most adorkable fellow you can find. Immensely adventurous, so there's no problem to get him into any escapade. Thing is, I rarely play casters. Magic confuses me, so I expect others to help me out a little, and make it clear to Steven as well. Dude, magic has never been my thing, but I really want to try a full caster. Will you help me if I misremember something? He replies yes, he absolutely will. That's the core of the problem. Just in case, I bring a sheet for another character, a Dragonborn fighter. Absolutely lawful good, and ask a few times if he'd be better for the game. But Steven insists on Brandywine. My GF takes her first ever D&D character, a silly young gnome cleric, Donna Donswick, who does everything to spite, like, say, becoming a cleric to piss off her brother. Torafis takes a gnomish monk. Unfortunately, I cannot remember his name, so I'll proceed to call him Torafis. The guy who plays Caled cannot make it, and oh, I forgot to tell that there was another player all along. But he was so passive that the only thing he was doing was rolling to hit and damage. So I cannot remember who he was in any of the 3 games, aka layers. Paladins, I think? So the story goes, we're celebrating New Year's Eve as a group of friends in the tavern, when suddenly we slowly fall asleep and wake up of extreme cold. We're alone in the tavern, everything's frozen, and there's ice and snow as far as we can see. We're on the North Pole, near Santa's house, and he summoned us to save Christmas. What the hell is Christmas? His evil brother Krampus has stolen all the gifts he was making for the children, and Santa gives us all a few magical items to help out on our quest, before calling for his sleds and taking us to the castle of Krampus to fight through the frozen halls, defeat him, and bring back the presents. Cute and funny, and we're all on board. First things first, we immediately take one of Krampus's goblins hostage, and convince him to tell us where exactly his master is hiding, and where the presents are. It's pretty easy to do. After all, Sorcerer's another charisma-based class. We learned that knowing what's going on, Krampus had set traps and brought creatures from the underworld to guard the presents. His castle has around 5 floors or so. Presents are in the 4 towers with no windows. Krampus is on the 2nd floor. That's also the highest floor with windows. We think we want to avoid part of the traps, mostly remembering 4 purple worms for 3 half-dead characters of level 7. We think hard about it when I come up with an idea. I can polymorph someone. Thing is, I have no printer at home, and have strict no phones policy at the table. So I have written out my spells briefly, components, duration, range, and a short description, and need help with them. So I turn to Steven, who flips around the handbook, and I ask, can I have the handbook? No, I need it. What do you want? Can you check this spell for me? I wrote down that I can turn someone into other creatures of the same CR as their level, but I cannot remember, is that any creature? Like, can I turn our dwarf into a young dragon? He looks around the book and says, yes, you can. Oh, that's a bit OP. Well, yes, but it says you can. Tip, no, you can't. You can only turn into beasts, aka animals. I was confused by my own wording. This was my first time, and Steven says I can do that. So Brandywine turns Torafis into a young copper dragon. His goal is to chip the ice from the 2nd floor windows, use his breath attack to clear the room, and lift the rest of us in. Which he does. He flies up to see if he can attack the towers instead. First only to discover 5 ballistas on the top of the castle, immediately attacking him for 1d100 damage each. They weren't there a moment ago, and it's an absolutely asshole thing to do in my opinion. He barely survives, but proceeds with the plan, in his dragon form chipping on the ice, breaking the window and breathing acid in. Steven is pissed. Torafis likes this, and he breathes acid again, and again, creating this thick acidic mist around. Steven flips out, throws his hands up, and says how all the servants, the monsters, the goblins, and Krampus start breaking out the windows, jumping into a moat to their death, screaming, "Fuck this life," and declares that we saved Christmas. That is absolutely anticlimactic. Apparently, Steven had spent the entire weekend drawing a dungeon for us. A big castle of Krampus, setting traps and monsters there, only for us to ruin it. We're all distraught, and we offer to just roll the time back and pretend Brandy never cast the spell. He doesn't want that. The rest of the evening he spends playing video games with a pouty face, while we're left to sit there feeling awkward. Sure, we both were wrong. The spell didn't work this way. He only had to look harder at the description, or give me the book, or out loud say, "No, you can't do that." Or say that this specific spell doesn't work here, or make the minions immune to acid damage, or plainly say, "Dude, no, just enter the gates. I want you to have a dungeon crawl." He's the DM after all. He has all the power. The next day, he writes us in the group chat, telling us all that he cannot DM for us because we ruin his games. He writes a lot about what we did wrong and what we should have done instead, how he expected us to act, and how he tries and tries and tries, but we never listen and do whatever we want. He doesn't say it directly, but he means myself and my stupid ideas for ruining his adventures. Well, by doesn't say it directly, I mean that he says something along the lines of, "You are all to blame, except Torafis, Mora, and Kaled." He sounds, or reads, absolutely hysterical, in a tantrum. Meanwhile, in private, we chat to go, "WTF, why didn't he tell us any of this? Did anyone know this? Did he tell any of you?" We all think that he could have easily changed everything by a whim. He's the DM, my GF says. His word is law. He just has to say no to this course of action, or that spell, or this lie. We agree with her, but decide not to tell him. I get back into the main chat and say something along the lines of, "Dude, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry you feel this way. I was just trying to be creative." To which he replies, "Your creativity ruins my D&D. I have my own arguments. How he never roleplays, how he never gives us a fair challenge. It's whether we get things for free, or we are attacked by forces much stronger than us, how he throws hissy fits, how his narrative is inconsistent, and how he changes his mind about previous sessions and decisions, how he pouts at all times for us not reading his mind and doing what he wants, how he's always trying to punish us with TPK, and what irritated me the most, how he never let us be wrong. I like my characters to be wrong. I like my characters to lie, to trick, to twist the truth. But most importantly, I like them to make mistakes, and I cannot tell you how many times someone of the party would say something like, "But how do they bleed the fairies? They're so tiny." And Steven will go, "Actually, out here they're about elf high. Just really long crescent ears, and blue skin, and they are called fae, not fairy." To which we'd reply, "Dude, we don't know that. We're new to these lands and never seen anything aside for a forest." Or someone would go, "You know, I think the hunters have a point. Actually, the hunters are an evil and corrupt organization and people fear and hate them." Like, dude, we don't know that. We've never met them and only base our judgment on a short lore Kaled told us. Even then, we have a right to think the evil guys are right. But I didn't say a thing about that. I didn't say any of that. I felt myself an asshole enough for role-playing too hard, but now I think maybe I should have. Or I was too desperate to find myself a DM. Back then, I thought that he's in a gentle mood, and he doesn't need to hear that. He even admitted to trying to TPK us on more than one occasion, but we just wouldn't let him. And it's us to blame. Steven just wanted to kill the party, but this all didn't really matter, and I wouldn't have written this whole thing if not for one single thing that he said that still makes me angry on its own. Not his blaming only me. I see where he takes that from. I was the leader of the main adventuring group after all, and needed to communicate to him more. Not the TPK attempt, not the fits, but that he said we're bad players, that ruin everything because you look like you want to be some sort of heroes or something. Like it's all about you. I mean, excuse me, Steven. It's Dungeons and fucking Dragons. We are the heroes. It is all about us. It's a game about being heroes and changing the world. Defeating the big bad, about becoming legends. What do you mean we're bad for following this simple directive, Steven? You don't get it. It's not about you and your fantasies. It's about the players. You're the DM. Your job is to let the players have fun, not to try and murder them and then get pissed at them for surviving. If you cannot do that, then I'm sorry. You're a bad DM. But again, I said none of that. I wanted peace. "Well," I said after he cooled down, "your world had such potential, but I understand. Meanwhile, I can offer to continue with my adventure for all of you. Steven, you are absolutely welcome to come over, since you now have more time to play. I do love your dwarf, and since it seems like this is our main adventure now, I can offer you to switch from Adventurers League's SKT to a real big adventure." Everyone supported the idea, even Steven. But in the end he pouted and huffed and refused to come, probably offended that I was positive about the change and didn't argue about anything. We're still playing Storm King's Thunder. It's soon going to be a year. Some players changed. I now have a great group of the most talented folks who break the game every time they have a chance. And I absolutely love that. We have drama and tears and laughing, in-game weddings, characters deciding to be good, changing their alignments, having crisis of fate, finding new gods, making mortal enemies, falling in love, getting into ridiculous situations, all of the things you can imagine. And my god, my players are so great, I want to be a better DM for them so much, and I'd really want for Steven to be a part of it, since I think he might have seen in time that not doing what the DM wants you to is not the foulest of sins, but a good thing that can lead to some amazing adventures. And if not, you, the DM, can always put your foot down and say no to a player. It's not that bad. Although I love my players, I do miss playing my asshole bard or absolutely idiotic tiefling, and I hope to find a DM for myself who'd appreciate roleplay as much as I do, and let me go on an amazing adventure myself instead of being on the other side of the screen. TLDR, we find a new DM for a high-level party who starts flipping out because we don't follow his story that we were never explicitly told about. Because he cannot TPK us, because he cannot break my game, I DM on the other day. Because I don't get irritated when he tries to avenge himself in my game, he never prevents us in any way from being creative or going off the rails, and then pouts about it, and at one point confuses a spell making it OP and allowing our group to skip the entire dungeon and rage quits. But not before finishing the game by blaming us and wanting to be the heroes of his story, as if this is a bad thing. End post. Well, that was a mouthful and a half. While I am going to agree with OP that both the DM and players could have done better, I'm also going to agree with OP that the DM could have done a lot better. This actually is a real problem that a lot of new DMs face. The players don't do what the DM expected, making the DM feel bad and unconfident in their own skill. Unfortunately, this DM instead decided to get angry with the players rather than communicate more clearly with them. It's also honestly really hard for me to read this story because the DM in question reminds me so much of myself when I started DMing. If you guys really want to know what the CritCrab Dungeon Master experience was back in my early days of DMing, take Steven's Dungeon Mastering to the letter. Well, all except the getting angry at the players and rage quitting part. I wasn't that bad. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more stories just like this one, or I'll send Big Dick Wizard 6969 to your house to cast Power Word Kill.